Hello, and welcome to this inaugural video podcast of The Age of Enlightenment. My name is Dr. Robert Stacy, Professor of Government here at HBU and an observer of all things Enlightenment. Well, you may have heard it. The Republican Party is in a civil war. Since the late government shutdown, there have been recriminations, finger-pointing within the party. Who's responsible for the failure? The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, longtime supporter, for the most part, of Republican endeavors, is making noise now about perhaps supporting more moderate candidates in future elections. There's been a lot of criticism leveled at Senator Ted Cruz of Texas for his leadership or perhaps even failure in this late shutdown. And now the Tea Party itself, who has had a proven track record of knocking out moderate candidates in primary elections, seems geared up for war. What does history have to tell us about the precedent for this kind of party fracture on the American political landscape? What is likely to be the impact of this kind of infighting or civil war among the Republicans? Let me say there are 3 points that might help us understand. Number one, you've heard the expression, nature abhors a vacuum. Well, it turns out the U.S. Constitution abhors a third party. The Constitution is set up in kind of a winner-take-all system. The House of Representatives is set up this way, the electoral colleges, and now by amendment so is the U.S. Senate. The result of that is that the loser, the minority, has a vested interest to unite together against the majority, resulting in usually a two-man race for nearly every position. There have been third parties that have snuck up. The Socialist Party ran candidates, so has the Libertarian Party. The occasional spoiler in the guise of somebody like, say, Ross Perot or Ralph Nader will sometimes get into a race, but we generally see two-party politics in America. Point number 2 is this. The fracture of an existing party, rather than, say, the rise of a third party, that can have significant impact on the American political landscape. Think, for example, of the Democrats prior to the U.S. Civil War. At that time, the Democratic Party went through a kind of implosion. Out of that dust arose now the modern Republican Party, so that was a very important outcome. Or, maybe less well known to some, is the election of 1912. In which now the Republican Party fractured. Teddy Roosevelt bolted the party to start the Progressive Party. The result of that fracture led to the liberal versus conservative split that we now see in American politics. Point number 3. Fracture is not always necessarily a good thing for the opponents. You might think, and I think some of the Democrats now are gloating a little bit about the infighting they see among Republicans, and you might think this is all good news for the Democrats. But again, back to that election in 1912. In 1912, a split Republican Party lost badly. Woodrow Wilson became the president and easily walked into the White House. But the next election, 1916, he won with just a bare margin, 2 or 3 percentage points. And then the next 3 presidential administrations were all Republican. In that case, and perhaps maybe even in the current case, sometimes a fractured party ends up, at the end of it, ends up in a stronger, more solidified position. So come what may between now and, say, the 2014 congressional election, we're going to see certainly infighting among the Republicans, but whether this results in a weakened, debilitated party, or ultimately a strengthened, maybe even soon majority party, remains to be seen. It'll be fun to watch. Thank you for joining us today on The Age of Enlightenment. Come back again soon.